There we go. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and start recording. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Liz Jones, the Blue Star Families Operations Manager, and today we have partnered with USAA to bring you another webinar on military financial matters in general. I have JJ Montanaro here. He is a financial planner with USAA, and he's been there since 2002. But the coolest part about JJ is he is a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, so he knows this struggle very, very well. Today we're going to talk about budgeting, saving, best practices, choosing an account, and how and where to start. If you have questions during the webinar, you can ask, and you're joining us via Zoom, you can ask them with the question and answer box, or you can ask them in the chat feature on the side. If you're joining us via Facebook Live, you can ask them in the comments. Ashley Hayes, who also works for Blue Star Families, is monitoring Facebook and will make sure that we bring the questions over to JJ to answer. Today we're actually going to start with a video from the USAA Straight Shooters series. It's located on their YouTube channel, and we're going to go ahead and post that link. The Straight Shooter series has about 15 videos. If you have time to go through them, I definitely would recommend it, and I encourage it. They're about 2 to 3 minutes long. They're not very long, but they tackle all sorts of issues that have to deal with military money matters. So I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Hey guys, it's Anjali, your straight shooter from USAA. Today, we're getting straight to the point on how you can save $1,000 in only 6 months. If you break it down, that's only like $166 and some change each month. And every day, that's basically like $5 and some cents. I mean, wow, that's like my afternoon coffee break. Here's how you do it. Let's start with step 1, open a savings account. Wait, did you hear that right? A savings account. When we open the app and see money in our checking account, we see that as available for spending. But when it's labeled savings, it feels a little more off limits, right? It's money for emergencies only. And here's step 2.
Uh-oh.
Put your savings on autopilot. So the savings, that actually happens without having to think about it. The money's just there. And if you don't see it, you won't miss it. Start with just 5% each paycheck. Now, if you can do more, that's even better. Your USA account has some features that can actually help you do that pretty easily. In fact, click the link in the description to get started. Number 3, look for places to trim the fat. I know, but there are places in everyone's spending account that you can actually cut back or cut out. A couple of dollars here and there, that actually goes a pretty long way. And number 4, if you're married, do it together. Make it a team effort. You'll save even more that way. And lastly, number 5, do it and do it now. Put your mind to it. Be strong. Check out usaa.com/financial tools for some great resources. Now let's kick this habit off and start the savings today. Guys, thanks again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. You can check out more episodes of Straight Shooters right here on USAA's YouTube channel.
All right. Well, that definitely was a lot of information to unpack in about 2 minutes. So that was only a 2-minute video. And I mean, she talked about a lot of stuff. And I wanted to hand it over to you, JJ, to kind of just talk a little bit about the video.
Sure. I love the video. Anjali did a great job there. I don't know if your experience was as good as mine, but this was better than last time, but we still have room to improve in terms of the delivery. But the message is great. And I think if you start with the premise of the video, you really get a lot of bang for your buck, because how do you save $1,000 in 6 months? And there's 2 things I really like about that. 1, she has a goal, which a lot of people don't have. And 2, it's very specific in terms of when she wants to get it done. And so I think if we start there and just look at our own personal finances and ask ourselves, yeah, we're saving in the TSP, or we're saving in an IRA, and we're putting money in savings, but do we have those specific goals? And if you can answer that yes, you have something that looks like $1,000 in 6 months, then that's a real plus.
Awesome. Yeah, I kind of want to just talk about her steps that she has. She's got about 5 there, and they seem like they're easy steps that I could even follow. And well, we talked about that earlier, my saving issues, but and one of the things we did beforehand is we asked for questions that people might have, and I had a bunch of questions that came through. So opening a savings account, one of the questions that we have are there different kinds of savings accounts, and what are they?
Yeah. So generally, you have a regular savings account. You have perhaps a high yield savings account, and then a money market account. So those three accounts are all something that you'd open up through the bank, and they're all FDIC insured. The other account that sometimes people use is called a money market fund, which is a little bit different. You get it from a mutual fund company. It's not FDIC insured. At times it'll pay a higher interest rate, but there's potential risk there. So those are the 3 types of accounts. It's a little bit different from most checking accounts in that you're going to earn interest in that savings account. The difference between a regular one and a high yield one is typically the high yield one will require you to put more money in it. So instead of having no minimum, maybe it's going to cost or require $10,000 to get into the high yield or get the full interest rate on a high yield savings account. And then as far as money market versus savings account, very similar, but typically with a money market account, you're going to have checks and perhaps a debit card. With a savings account, you won't have those. In any of those accounts, other than the money market fund that we talked about, you can only take out money or transfer out money 6 times a cycle, or 6 times a month. So they're not exactly like a checking account in that way either.
Okay. One of the questions was, what kind of return can I expect on my savings?
Billions of no. So the interest rates, if you've been watching the markets, have been going up. So we were seeing higher interest rates on savings accounts. I think at the very, very top end of savings accounts, maybe it's 2% these days. More typically, it'd be closer to 1% or 0.5%. So not a ton of money. But when we talk about savings accounts, one of the things you and I talked about, Liz, was just the idea that this is really short-term in nature. So we want the money and all of it to be there, as opposed to trying to take a gamble on a flyer and make a whole bunch of money. So while it would be nice to make a lot of money, in this particular case for this money, our primary goal is to set it aside, to accumulate it, and have it there for us when we need it.
Okay. So basically when she's talking about it during the video, like the 6-month savings of $1,000, like that's probably short term. That's a goal that's achievable. And she goes through the steps on what you would need to do to accomplish that goal. And so that's probably not going to be your high interest money market, whatever things that I don't understand, but you do.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just starting out, probably a regular savings account is what matters. But what I think is important, and what she mentioned about the savings account, is that it's a separate account. You have it, you've got your checking and where you pay your bills out of, but you've got this separate savings account. And I know at our house, we take it a step further, and I talk about this a lot, but we have actually multiple savings accounts, and we nickname them. So I have a River Cruise 2019 savings account. I have a house fund for stuff for the house. We have a vacation fund, and actually have a Vegas fund, but I typically don't go into details about that particular fund. But every paycheck, a little bit of money goes into those different accounts. And to her point, hey, when I look at that account, it's got a purpose. And so it does make it a little bit harder for me to decide, you know what, I'm just going to slide or transfer some money out and do something else with it.
Yeah. And, her second step, talking about putting your savings on autopilot, that's huge, because it's almost like when you're looking at a savings account, you do feel differently about it than a checking account. Like for me personally, I feel like if I see a checking account, I will spend every penny, every penny. But if it's in savings, I'm kind of like, ooh, maybe I don't want to touch that.
Yeah, see, before the cameras were on, you and I were talking about that. And I thought, I asked you, well, how are you addressing that? Because you said exactly what you just said then. And I was going to go there, but I didn't. But my thought was exactly what she was saying is, hey, make it automatic. get it
Yeah.
right from your paycheck, set up an allotment into the savings account, set up an automatic transfer. And that way the money is it's in its rightful place, and you're not tempted to use it for something else. So I think if you do that, even if you set up a little Mad Money fund, I'm looking right at you, Liz. You set up a Mad Money fund and use that same technique. Hey, I'm going to slide a little bit of money each pay period into that Mad Money fund, and that becomes where you go crazy. And you've set it aside, so you're okay. You have a license to do that.
That's awesome. I think one of the questions that we came in was, yikes, I spend every penny. Is there an account that won't let me touch or access that money?
Yeah. So I was at an event talking with somebody, and we were talking about this particular topic, and they brought up their own technique. So this isn't mine. This is something I learned from you guys. And what she said is she set up a separate savings account at a local bank. And so the only communication she got about that savings account was the statement, the paper statement that came in the mail. She didn't have it linked up on the phone and didn't have access to transfer out of it. And so for her, that was a way to segregate that money and keep it safe, if you will. So you got to figure out what works for you, whether it's earmarking it and naming it is enough, or you have to really take some drastic steps like going to a different institution and setting it up.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and that might be something that I might have to look into, because I bank with USAA on my phone. I see everything; it's all connected. Everything. I can transfer money around.
Bad, right?
I know, in 2 seconds, and the next thing you know, I'm like, oh, what happened to my savings? That's all right, I spent it.
Both good and bad.
True, very true, very true. Also, one of the steps, the third step she talked about was looking for ways to save money out of your budget. I know that, what is the best way to budget in your saving, like for your savings? Is it going to be, trimming things?
That's so sexy. I mean, everybody gets really excited. I'd love to hear some ideas about cutting back, because people have so many good ideas. But I was just trying to think about, it could be do-it-yourself stuff like washing the car, taking the dogs to get manicured, pedicured, and trimmed.
Fluffed and puffed.
I mean, I was thinking in my own situation, one of the things I love to do is I love to read on my phone. So I read a ton of books. And I was talking to somebody a few months ago, and they said, well, hey, do you use the library? And I'm like, no, I like to use my phone. And little did I know that all I had to do is go renew my library card, and now I have a library app where I can read books for free. So right there, I'd probably make it to the $1,000 in 6 months on that alone. So you have to look at your own situation. And I think one of the things that can be really enlightening, and we were talking to Ashley about this up front, is just tracking your expenses for a month or two to really realize where your money goes, because that can be an eye-opening experience in terms of, hey, we spend this amount of money eating out, or this much money on Amazon, or whatever it is that you're doing. So I think that's a great place for everybody to start if they're trying to figure out, hey, where is all this money going? How come I don't have any money to save?
Mm-hmm. So kind of just like looking over what you're spending money on. I mean, how did you have to track that?
Very detailed, Liz.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I said very detailed. You can't
very detailed. Very detailed listing of where your money is going, and then kind of looking at what you can cut out.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we need to focus on is I would say cut out and capture. So if you don't spend money here, maybe you slide it over into the savings account that we're talking about, as opposed to operating kind of a catch and release where you save money here, but then turn around and spend it right away here. So if you can capture that money, put it off to the side where you're trying to build that $1,000 or whatever you're trying to build for, you'll be ahead, as opposed to just, hey, I saved X amount of money using coupons, but what happened to that money? And oftentimes it's, I don't know, we spent it somewhere else.
Right. And then her fourth step is to save money with your spouse. What is the best way to get your spouse on board?
Do that, Liz. You tell me.
Well,
go ahead.
It's budgeting. It's looking at how much money you're spending and what you're spending it on, and thinking to yourself, do you really need that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. You have to be on the same sheet of music, and different things work for different people. But I've had couples that talk about what's going to be going on with their money each day. So they have kind of a morning pep talk to make sure they're staying on track. Maybe it doesn't take that much. Maybe it just goes back to setting up the framework, like we talked about earlier, where and so whatever is out there is fair game. But I do think you have to be, whether it's with goals like this, which are relatively short term and relatively minor but important. I think it's important that you're on the same sheet of music, and you don't. It's just like budgeting. If one of you is budgeting, the other isn't. It's like a leaky bucket where there's a hole on one side and there isn't a hole on the other. So it's not going to work. Liz.
All right. We actually that came in. It says, do you recommend? Oh, I had some feedback. All right. It says, do you recommend creating a Christmas account at the new year to help budget for the holidays and to stay on budget around the holidays?
I think that's a fantastic idea. That really fits what I was talking about earlier. So we have it for vacation and the house and stuff, but it's a great way to relieve the stress, the financial stress and pressure around the holidays, because by the time you get there, and that's age old. I mean, there used to be those, and there probably still is, those type of accounts, Christmas accounts, where you do that with your bank, local bank. And so I think that's a great idea. Again, maybe it's only $25 or $50 a month or every pay period, but then you get to the shopping season in November and December, and you don't have to worry about where the money's coming from because it's already there. So I love that idea. Yeah.
So I have a question, and this is from me. How many savings accounts can you have?
I've never tested it, but I think you can have just about as many as you want.
Really? See, I was under the impression you could only have like one or two, but I guess you can have multiple.
Yeah. Now, of course, you want to, like, for example, the USAA savings account, there are no fees. So you want to make sure that the savings account, you're not getting hit with account fees and that sort of thing, which obviously would make it less attractive to have more. But in my mind, again, I like to have a separate one for each of the goals that I'm saving for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kind of on this topic is just came to mind is Bankrate does the Financial Security Index each year in January, and one of the questions they ask is, hey, are you prepared for a $1,000 unexpected expense? Which that kind of dovetails with the whole, again, the video we just watched. And it's interesting, the last one was in January, and 60% of the people that responded said no. They'd have to sell stuff, they'd have to borrow from friends or family, or they'd have to use a credit card to come up with that money. So $1,000 doesn't seem like a huge amount, but it's really an amount that can keep you out of a lot of trouble in terms of most of the stuff that happens. Something happens with the tires on the car, or something happens at the house, or there's some unexpected fee you've got to pay. So I think it is a nice goal to set out there if you don't already have it in place.
Okay, we got another question. How much do you recommend before turning towards investing or paying down mortgage or other debt if you have no credit card debt, just student loans and car and mortgage?
Yeah. So in turn, you have no credit card debt, so that's one thing people always get hung up on, which, and rightfully so. Hey, you're telling us to have a savings account, but do I want to have money in an account that's earning 0.5% when I'm paying 16% for my credit card? So I think that's a great point there. Is it makes sense to have a little balance in a savings account because it'll help you break the habit of using the credit cards. But in this particular case, you said you didn't have a credit card. And so then I think you're talking about having a reasonable and doing more than one thing at once, shooting ultimately for that goal of 3 to 6 months of expenses. That's kind of the benchmark in the financial planning arena as far as what you have. But that can change based on your situation. If you're getting ready to leave the military or see that right around the corner, probably you want to have more. So 3 to 6 months, while it's a rule of thumb, it's not the gold standard. But I think as you're doing that, you can do some of the other stuff that she asked about, whether it's saving for retirement, whether it's paying down student loan debt, whether it's prepaying the mortgage. So those are all good goals, and the prioritization that you have with those different goals. It's going to vary from person to person. But I think one thing that I always cringe at is when people tell me, hey, I have to get the slate cleaned before I save for retirement, for example. And so then I feel like they've got to pay off all the credit card debt, which is good, pay off all the student loan debt, maybe not so much, all the mortgage. So I think you're ultimately going to have to probably do a bunch of different things at the same time.
Yeah. That kind of leads into like the step 5 of start saving now. It's never too late to start putting together a plan and start saving. I did want to take a minute and go over, hold on one second, the website that she talks about. I'm not going to go into depth on it, but I did want to share just a few of these things. So if you all can see that. So this is USAA.com/financial tools. Basically, you don't have to be a USAA member to access most of this information. Of course, if you want to start, deep dive into your personal situation, you will have to become a member, or if you already are a member, you can go into this. One of the cool things is it has these little things like how can I create an emergency fund? And it's got these, I'm sorry, JJ, it's not you. It's got these awesome like infographics that talk about it, so it's not just boring financial information. So definitely take a few minutes and go through this site and see. It talks about like what you should be at when you're a 6-month single age earner or you're married. There's a lot of information on this page and it's free. So definitely, go ahead and go here, use it. We're going to post the link in our description and on Facebook for you. Is there anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's been a theme of our discussion today is just the idea of building that framework, making it automatic, setting yourself up for success. And what we call a savings booster. So if you're on your phone on the USAA app, if you go down to advice and tools, one of the things on there is called a savings booster. And it's kind of a cool way. We have like a text savings program where you get these kind of funny messages, and there's an algorithm there, and they'll transfer a little bit of money into this savings account that we've set up. So you can set it up so that when you get those ATM rebates from USA, instead of going into your checking account, they go into this savings account. So we've got some cool tools along with what you just showed that will help people start to accumulate the savings.
I'm going to have to do a deep dive into that website. Awesome. If anyone has any more questions, please be sure to bring forward either by using the question and answer box or the chat feature or putting them in the comments. We did get a few more that came in. Is $1,000 enough for savings?
I would say for most people, probably for the long haul, no, but it's a great first step. I mean, because if you go again back to that 3 to 6 month rule we talked about, or just think about the idea of transitioning from the military and wanting to have a stash of cash to help you make that pivot into civilian life. Well, $1,000 is nice, but it's not going to go a long way. So I think it's a great start. It's a great way to start the habit of savings, but it's something you'll want to build on over the long haul.
Yeah, that was actually the next question as far as like, is $1,000 a good start, or should I like take that money out and invest it and then start again with another $1,000, or just keep it there and watch it?
So I think one of the things that I'll do with members that I'm working with is have them have a target. Let's say it's not 1,000, maybe it's 5,000. And once they get to that target, I actually have them continue to save into that account because life happens and things come up, what I'll ask them to do is, hey, once a quarter, look at that. If you're over your goal amount, so if instead of 5,000, you've got 6,000 there, that's $1,000 and you can take and go put in your Roth IRA or go pay down some student loan debt or do something with. So I think if you keep the mechanism going, even after you get the $1,000, it can be something that you can build on and then really expand where you're putting that money. Because you and I talked about just the idea that savings accounts are great, but if retirement is 40 years away or the kids are going to college in 20 years, maybe a savings account isn't the right place if you're trying to keep pace with inflation and really do some good things.
Awesome. Another question for you. How tight should we make the belt? How do we avoid being so tight that it feels like feels miserable? We want to pay down our credit card debt and still live life.
Yeah. So that's something that I can't really tell you. I can tell you my belt is fairly loose sometimes and fairly tight, but you've got to really find your own sweet spot. I think when you have stuff like credit card debt hanging over your head, to me, that's a little bit scary and something that you really want to tighten up the belt to do. And then once you get beyond that, maybe you can loosen it up a little bit. But I think it's all about, it goes back to where we started the whole conversation. Maybe if you look really at where your money's going, it offers you some opportunities, not necessarily to tighten up that much, just to be a little bit more targeted in where you're spending money. So you don't have to be, I don't have to be all the no fun guy. We can have some fun, but maybe not too much fun until we get some of those important things knocked out.
Awesome. We did have a few questions that came in regarding like USAA. Like, what is the best way to contact a financial planner with USAA?
So, I mean, you can do it on USAA.com, or you can just call the 800-531-8722. And when you get the voice prompt, say financial advice.
Okay. And that person can help you pick out the right account for you.
They can help pick out the right account for you. They can, we talked about the tools in a general sense, but they can help walk you through tools. And a lot of those tools, they can look at what you're doing while you're doing it. So they can help you interpret what you're seeing. So they can be a real asset.
Okay, awesome. We do have a question that kind of goes back to our buying versus renting days. Would you sell a paid off house, buy a house with a spouse? My credit is great, but his isn't. So that's kind of not so much about budgeting.
So it kind of depends on what. So in some cases, for example, with like a VA loan, you're gonna the military member you're gonna want the military member obviously on the application. It kind of depends also on income. So if you need both incomes in order to qualify for the loan, then you don't really have much of a choice. So I think oftentimes if you have one spouse with good credit and the other without, I mean, you can work together and help each other out. And credit cards are a great example of that. Maybe if I have bad credit, my spouse can get a credit card because she has good credit and then can add me on there. And over time, by making on-time payments, that can help out my credit. So I would want to understand what the implications of both spouses being on it. Is that going to penalize me in terms of the rate that I'm going to pay? Or is it going to penalize me because I only have one income on it instead of two? So there are a lot of dynamics there. So I don't know if I could answer that very specifically, but those are some of the factors to think about.
All right. Yeah, I definitely think that when you start talking about credit and those kind of things, those are very specific questions that probably my advice would be, and I'm not a professional financial person, is to call a financial professional person that can definitely help you out with that.
Look at your own situation and figure out what.
Right. Exactly. That is pretty much all of the questions that I have. We went through a lot and we covered a lot of information in pretty much not exactly a short amount of time. But if there's no more questions, I know everyone's kind of crunched for time with the holidays approaching.
They're not going shopping though, right? They're
No. Absolutely not. Well, JJ, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and for being here again. And I look forward to talking to you probably next month sometime.
All right. Enjoy the holidays, Liz. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.